I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Jamestown Public School Board to order. It is April 17th, 2023 at 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room at the middle school. Please note that we met at 4 p.m. also for new board member orientation with the board member and their mentor. I'd like to recognize all those in the audience tonight. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jamie, would you be willing to read the school board norms?
School board developed norms are to share and respect opinions and speak with a united voice once a decision has been reached, execute duties of school board in compliance with North Dakota Century Code, properly prepare for meetings, and commit to assessing board effectiveness and ensure high-quality governance for all stakeholders.
Thank you, Jamie. We have no request for public communication tonight. Are there any conflicts of interest other than what was declared previously? Are there any conflicts of interest? Are there any conflicts of interest? There being no conflicts of interest, we'll move on to our consent agenda. At any time, a board member can remove something from the consent agenda. It doesn't need a second. If you want to just motion to remove something, please let us know. Would you like anything removed from the consent agenda? Would you like anything removed from the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Gail, second by Steve. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. There being no discussion, all those in favor, assuming roll call vote, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Moving on to our regular meeting. We have JRMC and the Jamestown Public School announcement. Mr. Dels, would you come up and introduce yourself? And
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Delfs. I'm the CEO at Jamestown Regional Medical Center. I'm here tonight just to let you know that we're very, very happy to invest $200,000 over the next 5 years into the Jamestown Public Schools, and in particular with JHS Athletics. These dollars assure that JHS athletes will continue to receive care that they deserve through things like a utility vehicle that can help to transport injured athletes off the field, to purchase equipment that help keep athletes safe. This is also an investment in visually demonstrating to the public our partnership to each other as partners, and that JRMC is here to care for those athletes and get them back on the field as soon as possible. So last but not least, while our major investment is as the official sports medicine team for the Jamestown Blue Jays, we also will continue to support students through the student council, through prom, through post-prom, through sexual assault education, all the other things that we provide. So really my main purpose in coming here tonight is to thank you all for the partnership and the ongoing partnership that we've had with you. Thank you.
Oh, hold on. Dr. Leck, go ahead.
Well, Mike, and I also just want to thank you and the whole team at JRMC. Just a great partnership that's existed for many, many years in support of the work that we do in Jamestown Public Schools. And I just want to recognize that gift of $200,000 to support JHS Athletics is just a wonderful gift, something we greatly appreciate. But I also don't want to take away the other partnerships that, some of what you referenced, including the athletic training. Athletic training is provided by JRMC and is part of an agreement at no cost for our athletes. Those are wonderful commitments, and I think it's just another example of a great partnership that exists in the community between JPS and another member of the community. And I can't thank you enough for that commitment to us, and we will. That is something that will, over the next 5 years, really make a difference for our student athletes, and I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Speaking of athletics, we're going to move on to our winter athletic recognition. And as your name is announced, come right over here. And I have a token for you, and then we'll have you line up on the steps behind me for a photo. So Dan, would you please read those names?
Gladly. Tonight, we'd like to recognize in boys basketball, Ryan Larson for all conference. For girls basketball, we want to recognize Ella Falk, all conference, and second team, all state, and Katie Falk, all conference. In gymnastics, we would like to recognize Emma Hillerud, all conference and all state second team, WDA and state senior athlete of the year, 8th in state all around. And Julia Scari, all conference and all state first team, 5th in state all around. In boys hockey, we would like to recognize Brooks Roldson, all conference, all state, co-WDA Senior Athlete of the Year, Andrew Wald, all conference, and Jarrett Zalumskis, all conference. In girls hockey, we'd like to recognize Bernadette Belzer, all conference. In boys swim and dive, Teddy Selensky, second team all-state, and Bodie Hagland, all conference. In boys wrestling, we would like to recognize Aiden Braun, West Region runner-up, state third place, WDA and Senior Athlete of the Year, Colton Muse, West Region champion, state third place, and Jackson Walters, West Region and state champion.
Thank you, Dan. Under correspondence, we've received a card from the family of Bob Conrad, and we're sorry for your loss. Under reports, we have student council report. And Will, I understand this is your last report for us, and we'll.
All right. Hi, I'm Will Nelson. I represent the Jamestown High School Student Council. I'm the current executive president, and this will be my last report as the executive president. At the next meeting, we should have a new president or co-presidents. That's still being figured out right now. But as for me, this is my last one. And on that note, there's not a lot to say because we didn't have school for quite a bit of the portion since I last spoke to you. When we were supposed to have school that week, we had a blood drive scheduled with Vitalent, something we do twice a year. It was scheduled for that Wednesday, and before we canceled school and canceled sign-up, we had 15 people signed up, so we were on track to get our typical 40. Usually most people sign up the day before, and we usually have a lot of staff turn out that don't initially sign up. So we're looking to possibly reschedule that before the end of the school year, just because they really still do need blood over at Vitalent and broader in our community. But other than that, we didn't really have time to do much of anything. We had to cancel our last 2 meetings because of weather. And our last meeting where we'll take up new business will be this Wednesday. And we'll talk about potentially a community service project because the North Dakota Association of Student Council's president, his name's Caleb, and he's from Century High School, has announced that he wants to do a week of service during the week of April 24th. And he wants each school to submit a picture of us doing some form of service project to the North Dakota Association of Student Councils Instagram page, just to promote that our student councils statewide are being effective. So we're going to discuss that on Wednesday and see if we can come up with something within a week, the little time we have to plan, that's community oriented. We're hopeful that maybe we could do the blood drive, but it takes a lot to facilitate that with Vitalent. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot to report.
Any questions for Will? Diane, go ahead.
I just want to thank you for all your great reports. And I also want to say that one year, the high school students went out at exactly this time of year and cleaned all of the debris to the west of the high school, which had been revealed by the melting snow. So if you get in a pinch, that would look great on pictures too. So, plus they get out of class for a few minutes, so it could work. All right, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Will, and we have really enjoyed your reports as well, and we look forward to your successors, depending how that's decided, for future reports. Thank you, and best of luck to you as well. Under E, we have Board Education, Educational Competency, Standards-Based Learning Report. Heidi Eckert, Jennifer Gall, and Rachel Castett. Please come forward, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Rachel Castett, a fourth grade teacher at Lincoln Elementary. I'm going to report on the standard-based learning work that we've been doing at the elementary level, and I have a little bit of a slideshow here for you, just to give you a little bit of a picture of the work that we've been doing. After last year, we established a elementary leadership team that works on the standard-based learning work in each grade level, and we do this at our PLCs on Wednesday mornings, as well as the additional PD days that you guys granted us this school year. And all the work that we've been doing has been based on our priority standards in ELA and math. This work's aligned to our state standards, and all the programs and resources that we have are aligning with that curriculum being the priority standards that we chose. So all grade levels, so what I did is I talked to all the different grade levels, K through 5, and asked what's the work that you've been doing during these PD days, what's the work that you've been doing during PLCs, and that's some of what I'll share with you here. All the grade levels finished our priority scales for ELA and math. This is just showing you a snippet of what these look like at the different grade levels. Let's see here. We also all created I can statements for students and families to be used in PowerSchool. And what this is when we get to the point eventually where we're reporting these to families, this is what that will look like for them. So this has the standard that we use as teachers when we're doing this work, but then it kind of gives it to them in a friendly language so that when they're looking at their students' reports, they understand the work that we've been doing with those standards more specifically. That's one of the great things about standard-based learning is I feel like it gives parents a much better picture of what's going on in the classroom. It's not just a math grade, these are the exact things that we've been working on in math for this period of time. So we worked on those I can statements and completed those for both ELA and math. Some other work that we've been doing at grade level PD time and PLCs is common assessments. Some of that work is formative assessments that we do throughout the process to check how our students are gaining knowledge and what they're gaining, and some of it is more summative-based assessments where we can check in on them formally at the end of a unit of study to see that they are where they need to be on these grade level standards. And we also, the SBL leaders of each grade level, had the opportunity to go to West Fargo and see the work that they've been doing with standard-based learning. And one of our March PD day, we spent some time talking about the things that we had seen, shared some pictures of great things we saw. And one of the big things that we noticed was that they had a great tie-in with student ownership of their standards as well. Taking the time that it's not just us teaching to the standards, but it's the students gaining that understanding of really what those standards mean and what their expectations are, and them taking ownership in it. And one of the things that we got from that was called a student playlist, and not all of us have started work on this, but a lot of us have. This is an example, again, a snip of one that a second grade teammate did, and this is just basically, this is a list of things that align with the different levels of the work that they're doing in the classroom on a specific standard. So it kind of shows, okay, I'm working at a level 3 if I can do this work that my teacher has on this list, or I'm working at a level 2 if I can complete this work. And it's just a way for them to self-monitor and self-check, so it's not just the teacher reporting to them, this is where you're at. They also can report where they're at in that process. And then how we keep it all organized is kind of the last slide I have here. There's a lot. There's a lot that we are doing. My Google Drive is full of the work that we've been doing, and that's a lot of the intimidating factor, I feel like, for a lot of the teachers is how do we keep track of all this? So we've really tried at the elementary level to find a couple different ways that we can do that, and one is a standard plan that we created a template for. So, and that to me is more of a paper-based thing where teachers who are more comfortable with seeing it in a binder and flipping through pages, they can go there and find the resources that we've included. They can find the scales, they can find the assessments we've created in that standard plan for each of the standards. And then some of the grade levels are also working on what's called this digital click sheet, what's up there. And this is where everything is linked. And it's a one-page document where all of these things that we've created are linked into it. So they can click on it and they can go to the priority scale that we've created. They can click on it and go to the assessments and check-ins we've created. And it's all, so we've just tried to come up with something that, because we all organize things differently, I am a person that likes to take it right off my computer. I'm not necessarily have the binder in front of me. So the click sheet really speaks to me individually. But I know I have lots of fourth grade teaching partners who would rather find the assessment and make copies of it that way than just printing it. So we wanted to have a way to organize it for all types of people. So those are two of the things that we came up with. And then the last thing I have here is that each grade level has different levels of comfort in this. There are some grade levels who are just going, and have made great strides. We've all made great strides. I feel like that everyone's moving forward in this and everyone's getting more comfortable in the work that we've been doing. But the time for additional days is definitely needed, additional time. It's just, we learned very quickly that this is a very big undertaking, and if we want to do it right, that we have to take our time in doing that. We don't want it to be something that is haphazardly thrown together. We want it to have all the pieces necessary for people to be successful. So, yeah, that's all I have at the elementary level.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Gall, and I'm the middle school librarian and also part of the standards-based learning leadership team at the middle school. And just to build off what Rachel has shown you with her PowerPoint and told you with her information today, the transitioning from what we would call traditional grading to standards-based grading and learning is a shift that takes a lot of coordination. And so these professional development days that we've had over the past year have been so valuable to us. We've been able to make great strides, but we also realize we have a long ways to go. And as Rachel alluded to, we are all at each grade level, the elementary, middle, and high school, we're at different paces in reaching full implementation. So I'll just tell you a little bit about how we used our professional development days this year, and then tell you kind of what our timeline looks like as we move forward. So we had a professional development day in October, and at that time at the middle school, we were still working on book study and really getting our whole staff together and understanding what standards-based learning is and what we need to do to get ready to report standards-based reporting. So we worked on the book study, got started with that. The book was entitled A Teacher's Guide to Standards-Based Learning. And then we continued throughout this from October until, oh gosh, I bet it was about December, working on that book study and meeting during PLC time and so forth to discuss it. Also at that particular professional development day, we worked on scales and assessment training. So as Rachel had talked about, each teacher, each subject area needs to look at the standards that North Dakota puts out. We need to choose priority standards, probably between 10 and 15 or so, and it varies, but we have to choose priority standards and then write scales for each of those standards showing how our students will meet proficiency, what it looks like to be at a 1, what it looks like to be at a 2, a 3 which would be proficiency, and then that's that step above that level 4. So we have been working very hard to, gain a full staff understanding of what those scales look like. So we spent a lot of time in October getting ready for that. We also have another initiative in our building and in our district, and that's MTSSB, which is multi-tiered systems of support, the behavior side of that. And so that's been another important thing that we've used our professional development time to do. So I didn't want to overlook that as an important part of the professional development. So that was October. In January at the middle school, we dove into lesson planning and unit planning, really. And we all know how to write units, but when you are shifting from traditional assessments and things like that to more standards-based, the unit planning should look a little bit different. And Rachel talked about how we use those I can statements to then report on the report cards. Well, we at the middle school decided we needed to create those unit plans so that we knew exactly what the I can statements should look like, so we knew exactly what we are teaching the students to understand, and so that our units align with those I can statements on our report cards eventually. So we did a lot of work with that, and that was really good. We really were able to work out some kinks in that planning process. So that was January. We also did the book study that day. In March, we were able to meet with Danette. She's a consultant from SEEK, and that was really a good experience to have her expertise. She helped us align our thinking around our units and our planning. We discussed the results of a standards-based learning self-reflection that we did. So we did a lot of kind of thinking about how our staff feels about things, and that, of course, takes time too. And so those professional development days are very important in that sense also, to have time to communicate and work through some of those struggles. So I'll just now hand you our timeline, and this starts with spring 2023. So how we need to move forward now from, right now and then into the fall and ultimately the spring of 2026, when we will be full implementation. So let me just pass that around. You can get an idea. This is just particular and specific, I guess, to the middle school. That's our timeline. So, but it corresponds to the work that the elementary is doing. They're a little ahead of us, and then the high school will come in a little bit later than, no, we're coming in together, aren't we? 25, 26. So we're deciding. But do you have any questions for me at the middle school level? Okay, thank you.
I'm Heidi Eckert. I apologize. I wanted to be all dressed and fancy when I wore to school today, but we had track practice and it was gorgeous, so we were going to use that time to get outside. I will direct your attention up to the board, so I'm not going to restate what these two lovely ladies have already said. We've been doing the same things at the high school, but what we have accomplished on ours, we're feeling pretty good about, is a lot of collaboration time. And with our October 10th, we had a lot of individualized time in the morning. I was really appreciative of our administration of really gearing what our needs were at the high school. We had some departments that were ready to roll. They're like, we know our priority standards. We've had those for a long time. We're ready to get into building our proficiency skills. And we had other ones that were like, well, our standards literally just came out or had changed and we don't know where we're at. So again, the administration kind of put chunks of time in the morning and had little mini workshops on here's how you can look at your priority standards and get that task done, which was very helpful for those that needed that, instead of all of us having to listen to the same thing and like, we already know how that, we already have priority standards. So we appreciated our administration pretty much doing what we're planning to do with our students, of trying to gear it to the needs that they have. But what we did is in our learning management system of Schoology, we've been storing hours there, and there's lots of information people can look at. Sorry, I don't know how to use this mouse very well. I'm used to an actual mouse, make you dizzy. But we have ours that we just put, when departments get them finished, they've been storing them in here, and I'll just show you a little bit of what we've accomplished throughout those few days. And again, we did pretty much the same thing that middle school and elementary did, so I won't recover that. But here's what English has. So you can see some of the ones of the upper levels. And I'll just show you a few of those where they have their proficiency scales in there. Freshman English is going by periods, or quarters, excuse me. plus classes, just a few of those ones that we can look at, take a look at. And I'll just show you a couple that we have in there too. So math, they've gotten a lot done by their grouping. I'll just pull a couple that they have, the different classes that they have. That one doesn't have any in it yet, but all their core classes have quite a few pieces in it. You can see this. So they've been working and getting a lot done. And again, we're carrying over into our PLC time as well. So there's math, science I know has come a long way. So all of our core classes have really worked hard to group those and start getting at least a start on it. One thing that we noticed is we know these are going to change as we know and learn more about it. So that's why we have those as documents that we can easily change, and they're all in one particular place. We also know we're going to have turnover in staff. That's just a natural thing that's going to happen. So we wanted to have a location that everybody will know where to look for those and can easily get them and put them in a binder if they want, or have them on their computers as we start using that language more for our students. But we want to get comfortable as teachers as well. And Jennifer alluded to that. That's kind of our big goal at the high school, is really trying to wrap our head around what is this going to look like, so that we can communicate that to our students, so that we then can communicate that to our parents and our community. And that's kind of where we are. But the biggest thing I had for takeaways when I asked teachers is all of the training that we had that was given to us on October 10th and March 20th and those other ones. Just a few comments they put down is they said, we felt respected and appreciated because it was a valuable use of our time. In PD, we have lots of that, and sometimes we get a lot out of it, and sometimes we can take nuggets of it. But everybody that I talked to had a real positive attitude on the amount of time that we were given to actually work on this task that we've been put in front of us. So I was appreciative of a lot of them, of just having that time to be able to work with one another. So we thank you guys for allowing that this year, and I believe it's coming up later in the agenda of the calendar issues for next year. So we appreciate everything you do. Questions for any of us?
Dr. Luck?
I do have a question that I will, I had a board member, unfortunately, Mr. Roberts wasn't able to be here, but he had some questions that I asked, and you make a great point later on in the agenda. There's a request again for basically doing again what was just shared. We made a calendar adjustment last year, and the request is to do the same. And my recommendation for that will be to honor that request. But the question specifically related to that I feel like I did answer, but I want to give your team a chance to answer as well. And I'm sure that Mr. Roberts would have asked had he been able to be here. But the question is, if we are giving large-scale 2 additional days for SBL, does that mean that our PLC time, our late start time, is not valuable or should not be used for this time, or does it serve a separate purpose?
When I was presenting, I apologize, I didn't specify the fact that a majority of our PLC time this year has also been this SBL work at the elementary level. So when we're meeting with our grade level partners, so I work with my 4th grade team with all the 4th grade teachers in the district, that's a majority of our PLC days have been spent on that this year. I'd say 90% of them.
I would interject and say it's a continuation. We have 2 days that we've been given, and those were wonderful because it was a large amount of time. We could really dig into that. One of the other comments that people had made is the Wednesdays are nice, but it was like, what did we do last Wednesday? We got to kind of pick up where we were. Where these days, it was nice because we started the morning, okay, refresh, and you had all day to work on those. That large chunk of time was very beneficial in continuing the work we have been doing in our PLCs.
Yes.
And just to add one little bit to that, it really is important in those large group PLCs to have that training and talking about what this really looks like, and then we can continue to work in our PLC time. So training time is really important.
So important partners. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our group? Thank you for coming today, and go ahead and I'll make my comment. Go ahead, Jason.
The proposed changes to the calendar, do you find that adequate for what I know Mrs. Cass had said that's really what you need the most now. I just want to make sure that with a gargantuan project like this that you're being provided that. Do you see any other ways that this could be expedited or not really?
Instead of the professional development days, is that what you mean?
I just mean like making sure you're not feeling hurried, rushed, stressed,
I think
anxious.
I can speak to that a little bit. No, and I can speak to that a little bit because we did have a plan, an implementation plan in place already where elementary was going to be starting this process in the fall. And that's already been adjusted because we realized there's no way that we can. So I feel like the district is already accommodating to the fact that that this was a larger undertaking than we maybe realized when we started it. And so just having next year in general is already giving us additional time. But those additional days, like they said, would give us larger chunks of time to get some of those bigger things done. So I think that that's a really good step forward in the right direction.
Thank you, Dr. Leck.
And if I may support your response there too, this is the request that comes from the standards-based leadership team for that number of days. Had they suggested that we need more time, that would probably be the recommendation that would come forward. And I want to recognize the volume of work. You saw just folders and examples. This is an awe-inspiring task that our teachers have taken on to transition. And I think what's really important is they're doing it the right way. They're taking the time that they need, and they're working and building the foundation. So when we communicate out to families, so we make a transition, it's done the right way. I think sometimes we do these things too fast. And I appreciate that they're doing so much ground level foundational work that we can transition into this much more smoothly than we'd be able to had they not done so much work. And I think they've just given you a sample of how much they've really taken on. And it's great work.
Dan.
Yeah, my comment just basically echoes what Dr. Leck had said, but you had mentioned that about making the statements and the standards more transparent and available to parents, and it sounds like that's kind of a core feature you're building into this system, so I just wanted to say how important it's going to be. So, thank you.
And Gail, you had a...
I was thinking, having taught back in the 1980s, we had competency-based learning, which was very similar and put a lot of time into it. I hope that this is an initiative that we stick with. And I also, having done that at a high school level, there was a lot of anxiety, even some more than in the district I was at in Arizona. There was a lot of anxiety with kids at that level in particular because it was just something so foreign to them. How are some of those things going to be dealt with parents and with kids when they're applying for colleges, and some of those questions that are going to come up? Because certain things will still coexist. But I think a lot of people get confused about it.
That's the process that we're in right now of what is that going to look like? So we built the foundation with our proficiency scales. We know our priorities, and now we're like, well, how are we going to roll this out with students? So those are those conversations that we're having now. And I wish we knew all the answers, or somebody did. We could just go and take what they've done and make a cookie cutter piece, but it's not going to fit for us. But you bring up a lot of very valid points that every single person at the high school has already been putting buns in their ears of, how is this going to look? And then to, again, go with what Rachel was saying, they've shown the timeline, and high school is after that, but we've also, and I know they have too, if somebody is ready or willing to try it out and pilot it out, we're looking for those kind of people to kind of help that too, just to get their feet in, here's what worked, here's what didn't, how are we going to have this look for our parents, how's this going to look for our students? So there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. I wish we had answers for you at this point, but we do not yet.
A big part of what we do is the parent communication, and that's, we're getting that rolling right now, and that will come out throughout the next year and a half, so.
That was actually something that I was going to comment on. That really jumped multiple. I see number 5, number 6, parent communications, and for friends that have children in other districts that have already gone to this, I think maybe the teachers and students might adapt quicker than the parents, and so it's good to have that, because it's hard to know when you get this report card and it just has these numbers on it, and how does that translate to, as a parent, what we've always known. And so I appreciate all the parent communication and just information that you're sharing with parents, as well as the standards and those kinds of things, just the transparency of all of it. I appreciate that as well. Any other comments from the board? Okay, questions? Yes, thank you, and we look forward to having you back with the progress updates, so thank you. Moving forward to the superintendent's report, Dr. Leck.
Thank you. You have my written report. I'll skim through some topics, but our personnel updates, you have two recommendations for hire coming up later in your agenda, Tim Ranum and Diane Fink for a high school position and in the elementary. Again, very appreciative of Mike Delfs to be here to make a really wonderful announcement and collaboration with JHS related to athletics and that commitment of $200,000. It's something we've been visiting with and talking with them for about a year and trying to work out details. And I'm so happy that Mr. Delfs was able to be here and talk about that. A lot of respect and appreciation to Katie Ryan Anderson also, who I've been visiting with quite a bit related to this at JRMC. At James Valley CTC, we're again planning a summer academy. Hopefully, if funding comes through, we're able to do that again. Our focus has been in the area of aviation. We have space for 15 students. I want to give a lot of credit to Mr. Heinert. He has really been instrumental in this idea of a summer academy, something we talked about. It's one of those things that I said, something along the lines of, hey, I have a great idea. Hey, Darby, why don't you do X? I can live with my head in the clouds and say, kind of just spit out ideas, and then people like Darby make those things reality. And he's done just a great job, Mr. Gaylor as well. But I'm really happy that we're able to offer that summer academy. Great response from our students, mostly middle school students that were able to do that last year. And I'm glad that we're able to offer that again, assuming that funding comes through like we anticipate. I have outlined our schedule for assistant principal interviews. We're doing that over the course of this week at JHS. We'll do some tours and interviews, and we may have a request to have a special board meeting next week, depending on the candidate, depending on the timing. If that works out, if we can delay that hire until our next regular meeting, and don't feel like we would need a special meeting, we would probably just delay, but I wanted to make you aware of that potential. I outlined in my report a Parks and Recreation discussion that occurred on March 7th of 2022 at that board meeting. If those that were here, and I did include the minutes, we had a request from Amy Walters at Parks and Rec to support a project for Trapper Field with lights, and the board at that time approved the use of $15,000 or to devote $15,000 to that program. And Mr. Roberts actually, I want to reference again a comment or an email that he shared with me because he wasn't able to be here, just related to he wanted the board to be aware that he voted no against that measure. And the reason that he did that was because of the timing and that it wasn't outlined specifically in the budget. Because this request, well, it's the same request, but now we would be able to build it into the budget. That's something he agrees that the board has already made that commitment, but he would support it if we are able to budget for it appropriately. Again, we don't need to take another motion, but he wanted me to outline that the concept of providing support was not the issue. The issue was budgetary, and was it budgeted for? The other point that was made in both of these I agree with was that in the future, if we take board action, a recommendation to have a deadline for those funds, probably within the term of that fiscal year or in the next fiscal year in that budgeted year. So if that request doesn't happen in that time period, that the requester would need to come back and make that request again in the next budget cycle. That's just good fiscal practice, so I would recommend those as well. I did have a great dialogue with Mrs. Walters about Parks and Recreation. We had JRMC here talking about the collaborations. We have equally great collaborations with Parks and Rec, and we have a facility agreement with the University of Jamestown, another great partner. I had talked with Mrs. Walters about transitioning to that for Parks and Rec as well. Could we do an agreement similar to what we have with UJ that outlines all of the sharing in one document instead of we have an agreement for Wilson, we have an agreement here, we do this at no cost, but these things are fee-based. Can't we just have a universal agreement that we approve once a year? And those are the conversations that we've started to have, and we both agreed that is probably the most efficient. Beyond that, I suggested that rather than every 3-4 years coming to the district and saying, hey, we're doing this project that impacts a facility that the district uses. Will you commit X amount of dollars? But could we build that into a universal agreement? So that's reported on. You know, for example, if we do that, if we had done that with Trapper Lights, you know, on an agreement, it would say this much, you know, has been devoted. I'm just pulling a number out. Say it's $3,000. So we say $3,000 every year is devoted to one of these projects, rather than just sporadically coming and saying, okay, now I need 15,000. No, we would report that every year in that sharing agreement to say $3,000 devoted to, here's the project. Lights at Trapper Field. Maybe in the future it's, you know, a new Zamboni at the Wilson or whatever. And then that way we've always made our commitment, and we don't have to try to figure out a budget line for these different things that come up. Because the reality is we need to support these projects, in my opinion. We are provided these, you know, we are asking the taxpayers to either support the Parks and Rec Department or Jamestown Public Schools, and Jamestown Public Schools. These are taxpayer dollars, and we want to be as efficient as we can in supporting those projects, because we use those facilities oftentimes at no cost. So our commitment should be to support them. But this might be an easier way to budget. The board self-assessment, just a reminder that that's open through tomorrow. So I think I left it open through the end of the day tomorrow at midnight or so. So if you haven't done that survey, please do that. The Art Center agreement is up later on in the agenda, and Mindy Schmitz is here as well to share not only that agreement, which I will note has no cost increase from the previous year. They are continuing to operate that at the same cost. We have provided a written report from the Artist in Residence program that you can get a sense of what our Artist in Residence provides to our students in there. And she's also going to share a brief report on the expansion efforts that will be directly impacting, positively impacting school-age students in the arts. The last item that I have legislatively, I've provided an updated Google Doc, as I have done throughout legislative session. You know, my two target areas, House Bill 1040 and Senate Bill 2239. These are interesting because they are contradictions, and they both passed their respective initial chambers. House Bill 1040 transitions the PERS plan. PERS is our North Dakota retirement program for our support staff, or those government employees. But for us, it's our support staff. They don't have access to TFFR. Their retirement pension is in ND PERS. In House Bill 1040, that transitions to a defined contribution plan. So think of defined benefit plan, pension. Defined contribution plan is like your 401k, you know, a very similar idea. A transition from a DB plan, defined benefit pension, to a DC plan, defined contribution, comes with a lot of risk. It shifts risk from the plan itself to the employee. And I have a great level of concern about that from a recruitment standpoint. We need to take care of our support staff. And the pension that is provided through ND PERS, in my opinion, is a great recruitment and retainment tool. And we have to recognize that the value that that risk, or taking on that risk, has. People are willing to take a slightly lower hourly wage when they have protection of that risk in their retirement. It's a wonderful retirement plan, and I don't think anybody would suggest that it is not. I would say it is akin to deferred contributions, deferred wage. They are taking a little bit less in wage and shifting it to that retirement benefit, that pension benefit. If that were to be taken away, my concern would be, how are we, number one, going to retain and recruit people? And that comparison between this job and another job down the street becomes a lot harder to make. That $2 more an hour suddenly makes a big difference when you are now making an apples-to-apples comparison to their retirement plan. And I think it would be very, very unfortunate for our support staff if they lost that opportunity for a defined benefit. And I understand there's a great cost. I would say that with that cost also comes a huge contribution that the staff themselves are making into their own retirement. and I consider it to be deferred. Again, they're deferring their own compensation. There is some influx of dollars, lump sum dollars into the plan to help it to be solvent. One thing I would draw your attention to, though, is the request has been made in multiple legislative sessions to increase contribution rates, and that's come from PERS themselves, and that's come from employees themselves wanting to increase their own contribution rates to maintain an upward trajectory to funding status. Sometimes the plan itself gets blamed for, taking a downward trajectory on their funded status, but they've been trying to put more money in the fund, and legislatively that's been declined. And so this is a created problem. It absolutely is moving downwards, but I would ask the reason why. It's because those contribution rates don't match what they need to match to make that a funded plan. And I just want us to be thinking about what we're going to do as a system if this changes. If for new staff coming on board, the people that are in our district employed as support staff, they're still going to have access to that pension through PERS. That bill wouldn't change that. It's the new staff. And so I would pose the question, and I don't have an answer to it, but I would pose the question, what are we going to do when we have two classifications of employee? One that has access to that less risky, better long-term retirement plan, and one that doesn't. Are we going to have two wage scales for two different sets of employees? How are we going to manage that? And they're real things we really need to think about, and I hope that doesn't occur. But as the president for TFFR, I have a personal bias in some of these feelings towards the retirement plans that we have. But again, I want to continue to make the point that this is about deferred compensation. People are taking a little bit less so they have that risk-averse retirement plan. That's no different from PERS as it is from TFFR. That leads me into Senate Bill 2239, and what Senate Bill 2239 includes that same infusion, along with some contribution changes that would maintain that defined benefit plan, that pension plan for those that are currently in it, and it would maintain the same. Neither are great options. They both have significant cost. I look at the cost, though, indirect cost that would come to our support staff, and that to me makes the difference on what plan I would support, and I have supported through conversations with those that make those decisions. But that is, I would certainly stand for questions if you have any on my report or my legislative soliloquy.
Gail.
I would like to add that I 100% concur with what you said about that. Having worked in the school district for a number of years, having worked with paras, having worked with support staff, that is the thing that has kept those people with us and kept some of our very best people. I think it would be a great thing if people are so inclined to reach out to your legislators now. Not tomorrow, as soon as you can, because this will be an issue for us. It will be an issue, not just for us or all districts. This is one of the, I'm just passionate about it too, and I have a bias, like yourself, but I think if you have to go with two different tiers, you're opening up a can of worms that you probably don't want to open up. If you are so inclined, please reach out so that they can understand the difference between the two and what that would mean to school districts.
Well, I just think as a district, we need to support our support staff in that whole compensation continuum. The other point that I neglected to make that I wanted to make is in both bills you would see a contribution increase. There has to be a contribution increase. That's no different than what's happened in TFFR. The difference is TFFR happened a few years ago, and now this is finally happening for PERS now. The difference would be they both include a 1% increase, but you would have in 1040, which transitions to a defined contribution plan, you would have this a long-term influx of new dollars, because every year how pensions work is the people that are employed currently fund the people that are retired. Well, if you close off that whole plan, the state has to fund the difference. The state has to match those dollars every year to make sure that enough money exists in the plan to pay out your funded liabilities. So you would have to infuse that money. So essentially what you're doing is paying more state money, increasing the employee compensation or employee contribution to get a lesser benefit. That's 3 strikes, man. You're out. It's not a win for our support staff. And at least in the DB plan, you're making that, or in Senate Bill 2239, you're making that increase 1% for employees who are then, they're making that contribution increase themselves. So again, they're funding their retirement plan. So yes, there has to be an influx of funds, and that's unfortunate, but it probably should have happened the same time the rate changes, the contribution changed for TFFR for teachers too. And I bet you PERS wishes that would have passed, but it didn't. So now there has to be something to fill that gap. But yeah, either way, you're going to see an increase in those contributions. It's just, what does the benefit look like? I would rather have a benefit that if you're going to see an increased cost, you don't see a worse benefit for it.
Melissa?
Question, and I don't know if you've had conversations with Amy Walters regarding the Trapper Field lights. I know that they're looking at redoing all the fields and everything over there. Is installing these lights this summer going to be affecting those lights having to be relocated later at all, or?
That's a great question, and one I hadn't thought of, so I'm glad you asked it. I don't see them as being the same part of the same project. The lights are separate from. The way I understand that plan, there are different fields that could be used for both, but this would be specific to Trapper Field, not related to, and I think sometimes we oversimplify the project that Parks and Rec is taking on and saying, well, that's about baseball. Because, we think about Jack Brown and baseball and we think of those fields, but those fields would also be available for our girls' teams and our women's teams for softball. And this is about baseball and softball. And there's certainly more space devoted to, at least in our minds, about baseball, but it's really about baseball and softball. But to answer your question, no. Trapper Field lights would go to Trapper Field.
Jason?
Back to the legislature, I would like to also draw attention to Senate Bill 2260. Anyone out there or my fellow board members, this is the Senate bill that is in regards to parental rights in education, and we're all for parental involvement in schools. That's not in question. We're all for parental rights also. Some of the language in this bill, however, though, is very infringing upon the teachers, our staffs, our administration's ability to do their already difficult job even more difficult. So I would just encourage you to, and it's going to be voted on either tomorrow or the next day. It came out of the Human Resource Committee as a due pass. So I would just encourage you, again, it's Senate Bill 2260. It's got some very interesting language in it. So on the outset, it sounds very, like, yeah, it's a no-brainer, transparency. But just take a look at it, and if you're so inclined, like PERS, reach out to our legislatures with your thoughts.
I think I'm so glad that you brought that up, and that's one that it's been on my list to focus on as well. But who doesn't want parent involvement? That's not at question. But the implementation, the execution of that bill would be very challenging for schools and specifically for teachers, and that I would struggle with the passage of that particular bill also.
Any other comments or questions? I just want to comment with the Park and Rec. If we go to like that single agreement. We do have that exchange agreement with them for track. And so do you see that being tied in, or do you, so when we exchanged the land for the track, we had an agreement. Do you see that being tied together, or just that kept separate yet, and then just have an agreement?
My thought initially is that we would want to roll everything into an agreement that kind of a one-stop shop. I will say, though, Amy and I have had discussions, cursory discussions about something like this, but anything that would have to come before the board would have to be vetted by legal counsel before we would bring it forward. But that would be something I would want to include because it is part of the partnership that we have.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to make sure we get the board, the school district gets their value out of that agreement, was my only comment on that. Any other questions or discussion points? Okay. Thank you. Moving forward, we have nothing under old business, under new business, nothing under activities, nothing under buildings and grounds, or curriculum assessment and instruction. Under finance, A, is there a motion for approval of the 2023 to 2024 Arts Center agreement? Motion by Jason, second by Gail. We have a motion and a second for approval of the 2023 to 2024 Arts Center agreement. Any discussion? Any discussion? We have a motion and a second for approval of the 2023 to 2024 Arts Center agreement. There be no further discussion. Assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. We have Mindy Schmitz here, the director of the Art Center, to give us.
I thought I'd have to do a little song and dance about
Give
that,
us-
but okay, maybe I should just sit down. No, I do want to
Give us a
thank
report.
you so much for all of your support for the Art Center and the Artist in Residence program, particularly. I don't know, Rob, it predates us, but I think it's been around for over 20 years. Gail, you might know, I don't know. Over 20 years for sure. So I see there's a couple of new faces here, but what the Artist in Residence program is we provide a professional artist that comes into every elementary school in Jamestown and does all the art classes for, well, not all, but at weeks at a time for the art classes in those elementary schools. And it's been a great partnership that we've had. It's a cornerstone of our project or our program. The artist actually lives upstairs of the Art Center. Linda's our artist now. She has two kind of wonky vans and a weird car, so she's going to be leaving us this year, and so will those vans. One thing that we are bringing back next year is a performance for all the elementary kids. We haven't done that since COVID, and this year it'll be a light wire theater company to the Duckling. And then next year we also have a new artist. Linda's been here for 5 years. That's a long time for an artist in resident, but through that time I became the director, and we had COVID, and then we have a new education director, Anna Jacobson. She was new last year, so it just worked out for all of us to have Linda stay on, and she's a visual artist, so she's works in 2D art. And Anna Brock is our new artist in resident, and she works with clay. So that's going to be very different for the elementary kids. So she's going to go in there and actually have clay with them, and she's going to tote around a pottery wheel, and so, and my assistant, Anna, says that Anna, she's a shot putter at UJ, so she can lift the pottery wheel. Oh. Anyway, any questions about the Artist in Residence program? So my new project, if maybe you've heard about it, is we have bought, well, we're going to, buy the bar adjacent to us. It's the Wonder Bar. Some people have maybe even been in there. Not saying who or why or whatever, but the Wonder Bar has been open, has been vacant, well, not vacant, there's still a lot of stuff in there, closed since COVID. And so our board thought it's a pretty good opportunity. We actually share some services like sewer service and that kind of stuff with the Wonder Bar. We're growing exponentially in our programming. Our Arts After School program is our second cornerstone program, and we're turning kids away because we only can, in our classroom, existing classroom now, we have room for 15 max, and it's maxed. And so we've made a purchase agreement, and we've undergone a $2 million capital campaign to buy the bar and renovate it and change it into a classroom space that we need. So we'll have a pretty big footprint so right in the middle, I need a pointer, but I don't have one. So right where it says art, you can't see that. Okay. We can see it. Okay. So it says On the corner here is the Wonder Bar, this part right here. The next is still the Wonder Bar, and then the taller one is our existing art center, okay? And then across the alley, we actually also own that, and that's the Hanson's Clay Studio. So that's where we do our clay and some adult classes. So this is going to be a big footprint that the art center is going to have downtown. That whole front part will be windows and a walkway, and that will be lit up all night long, and there'll be kids' art displayed back there. So some of the things that we do, you guys know, because I've been here before, but we have artists in residence, thank you, arts after school, year-round classes, downtown arts market. We work with the elder care facility in town to do art for life. We have an exhibit gallery that changes exhibits every 5 to 6 weeks. We have a community theater coming up. That's the first weekend in May. I don't know if you folks know theater people, but they're interesting. Okay, that's all I'll have to say about that. So right now, our Arts After School is just 3rd through 6th grade. And so we know that there's a demand out there for middle school particularly and younger kids. So that's what we need the space for. We're going to have those classrooms full all the time. We really know there's a need for middle school. So we're going to expand our footprint and expand our services. And that whole space at the Wonder Bar is going to be 2 different kids' classrooms. So that's the floor plan. So the blue over here on the right is the gallery, existing gallery. So that's the whole art center on the right side. That is the yellow is the existing classroom that has 12 to 15 capacity. That will change into a culinary kitchen. And I've been we've been emailing back and forth with Mr. Gaylor about using some high school things in that classroom. So I might have to come back with another request next year for that, but one thing at a time. And so then the new space will be on the bottom, that's a green space. So that will open up into our gallery will open up into that green space for other events. There's 2 studios right up against the green space, and that will be for the visiting local and regional artists that will be housed upstairs of the Wonder Bar, or we can rent those out to local artists because we've had that asked too. And then a big classroom there, and then the gallery, or a gallery in an open space to the left-hand corner, and then in the back another big classroom. And then this is upstairs of the Wonder Bar. We'll have 2 different bedrooms and a shared living space. And that way we can bring in regional and local artists. They can do arts after school, arts classes, culinary classes, classes for adults, anything. So our goal was to raise, we need $2 million, and we're supposed to raise it by May 1st. Well, that's not happening, but we will be at about, right now we're at about $895,000 in pledges. So we're doing pretty good. And we've got a lot of big asks out there, and we haven't done a lot of the small receptions and that kind of stuff. We'll probably be at about 1.2 million by May 1st. So, but the last 800 is going to be pretty hard to get. But, you know, when we expect to have a grand opening next July, I hope that the facility is open for sure by the next school year. So, questions, comments? Yes. Oh, sorry, I'm not in charge.
I just want to thank you for this, and speaking like in my past life, these art after school things are so great for some kids. Not all kids are into sports, especially in that elementary level, and it gives a lot of kids a really great place to be and discover those talents within themselves. And it's just been a great partnership with public schools throughout the years. So I just can't be more excited about this for our community.
I have a pledge sheet for you, Gail.
Well, I'll do my best.
Just kidding.
Maybe we could, a dunking booth or
Yeah,
something.
right.
Jason?
Where, on that diet, where was the space for children activities? I missed it.
All those yellow spaces on the left part, they're all going to be.
Sorry, I mean outside?
There's, that's a sculpture, it's called a sculpture garden, but that's a
Oh.
green space.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
going to be for receptions or whatever. Another
Okay.
thing too, today when I came here, there's parking at the Art Center is atrocious. We provide transportation from James Valley Transit, from the kids from school and to home, and those buses have to park in the alleyway, and then XLT taxi, they're crazy people. I mean, it's dangerous. And so there'll be a drop-off spot where the Wonder Bar parking is right now.
Jason?
There was a gentleman who I believe was the director of the center for 8 months, maybe from out east. I don't remember his name, but he was he was here temporarily, and he was very, he knew a lot about art centers around the nation. And I remember him saying how fortunate Jamestown is for a community our size to have these resources. And this guy knows what he's talking about. So again, I think this is one of our jewels of our city. So again, thank you for what you're doing, for everything, especially for our kids. So I just wanted to mention that so people remember how fortunate we are that we have this kind of art center here.
I think if you'll talk to any recruiter, like with JSDC and the hospital, they show them two things, track and the art center. So it's kind of nice.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Thank you, Mindy, for coming and also sharing some of the future opportunities for the Art Center. We appreciate that and all the things that
Yeah, and we
the Art
appreciate
Center
your-
does, to
your
also
support.
to benefit our children here, so at Jamestown Public Schools. So thank you. Moving on in our agenda, under Finance, under B, we have approval is there a motion for approval of the 2023 to 2024 fee schedule? Is there a motion? Motion by Jamie, second by Dan. We have a motion, a second, for approval of the 2023 to 2024 fee schedule. Any discussion? Any discussion? There being no discussion, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. C, the general fund balance is there for your information. If you have any questions, Christy would be happy to answer that. D, monthly financial reports. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Gail. Is there a second? Second by Jason. We have a motion, a second, to approve the monthly financial reports. Any discussion? There being no discussion, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Under personnel, number 5, A. This is options for central office administration. And Dr. Leck, would you want to walk us through those options you laid out for us?
Sure. It was requested, I'd commented when Mr. Hagelin's resignation was approved that, there's potential here to look at some different options. The request was put together some options, and to me, this is the start of a conversation. Maybe it is, maybe the solution is here, maybe it isn't. I don't think that this is necessarily a decision that absolutely has to be made today. It might be something that needs another meeting or more dialogue or a new option. But, I am trying to get a conversation started is where I'm at. One of the things that I think is really important that we recognize prior to moving forward in some of the dialogue of these options is that Mr. Hagelin is 0.5 curriculum professional development in contract only. He works more than 0.5, and his responsibilities far exceed a curriculum professional development coordinator. He has a lot of administrative responsibilities that he does take on in that 0.5, 0.75, whatever he really is. Beyond his 0.5, Christy and I were just having the conversation earlier. We had Title I Federal Programs Audit Report. Along with Amy, Joe had a significant responsibility related to that. We had an outstanding response to that audit from the Department of Public Instruction, and a lot of that has to do with the work that Amy and Joe put in to compiling and responding to all of this information. That is not within the purview of the Curriculum Professional Development Coordinator. That is in the purview of a central office administrator. But there are responsibilities that Mr. Hagelin takes on that I just want recognized by the group that are not part of a Curriculum Professional Development Coordinator. So I listed some things in the memo. Management of instructional coaches. We have an upcoming Cognia visit, our 5-year review. That's going to take a significant amount of time, and Joe's currently that school improvement coordinator. He manages a number of federal programs. He manages our ASOP system, a number of other lesser responsibilities, things that I could probably think of is if I had a little bit more time, but I just used et cetera instead because that's kind of what Joe's position is. All the other things that we need, Joe just does. But option one would be to maintain a 0.5 curriculum professional development coordinator. The problem becomes with option one is, you know, the cost footprint is the same, right? I mean, it's relatively the same. But who fills that position? Joe has central office function in his role. So if we have a 0.5 FTE curriculum professional development coordinator, how do we fill the stuff that Joe is doing that, and who does that fall upon? And I'm guessing that you're probably looking at them, who that might fall upon in those in this scenario. The other logistical challenge that I would see is how does that position work? Is that a reassigned person, somebody that currently is under contract that could take on the curriculum professional development aspects of that job? The concern I would see with that is, well, that's taking away somebody from some job they have right now. Whether that's an elementary principal that takes on some of that function, well, the board has been pretty clear that we want a building principal in every building, so how might that work? If you use an instructional coach, which is another option that the board may consider or that we may consider in central office, well, who does that instructional coach work? You know, we don't have people employed that are looking for stuff to do. They're usually really busy and with a full plate of stuff. And so who does the stuff that person then doesn't have the opportunity or time to do? The other option would be, could you find another Joe? Some retired person or some person looking only for 0.5 time, and I would say that would probably be a challenge to find somebody with that level of expertise, somebody that's looking long-term, somebody that has that varied skill set. I think that would be tough to do, but it's certainly something that we could look for if that's the plan. I would suggest that would be similar in nature to what Joe is at right now, and I provided a salary range there, what I would anticipate. But again, that's essentially what Joe is at right now. See a pretty neutral budget footprint there. The other option, or one of the other options that I'll only briefly touch on is option 3, eliminating the position entirely. I say that briefly because I feel it's my responsibility to bring that option to you. I don't recommend that in any way. That's a lot of work that would fall to somebody else that is currently in that current footprint. That would be a lot to take on for the system. If we went that route, I would need to redistribute those responsibilities to building principals, which we've already done the last time we shifted or decreased central office administration, and that's challenging. Their ability to handle those responsibilities now are tough. In eliminating another position, I don't know how you could distribute those responsibilities and still continue work. The other option that I've outlined is transition that 0.5 position to a full-time position, and if you went that route, I would recommend that it becomes an assistant superintendent position for a few different reasons. One is that I feel already that we're constantly behind in central office. We have a strategic plan that's very ambitious. We have big initiatives like standards-based learning that we want to do, and I'll be honest, I always kind of feel under the gun of I'm chasing a deadline because I don't feel like from a central office standpoint we have the appropriate footprint of staff. It feels like we're short, and it feels like we aren't able to do as much as we want to do as fast as we want to do because we don't have that extra support. And that's with Joe as more in 0.5 in contract only because he certainly isn't. But I feel like we're short when we compare to other Class A peers and only slightly larger. We aren't going to compare ourselves to the largest of Class A schools because that's not an apples-to-apples comparison. But if you look at those directly below us or in our same range, we're anywhere from 0.5 short and go a little bit larger, 1.5 short, and you could even probably say more than that if you consider full-time HR director instead of generalist, but I make that akin, kind of an akin type of comparison. I think a transition to a full-time assistant superintendent allows us for greater efficiency. We are a better, improved coordination of our curriculum, professional development responsibilities, our alignment of professional learning, our ability to move quicker on initiatives would be valuable. And I think we have a lot of needs in our district. This would help to fill that gap. Another example that I outlined, and I say this not as, my intention is not to leave, but I do think the board has to consider ascension planning. What happens if the superintendent were to leave? How would you manage that transition? I think an assistant superintendent gives you two options. Number one, you might have a natural ascension that exists from the assistant superintendent to the superintendent position, or it gives you a full-time central office administrator with an educational leadership background that could transition that next superintendent. I think that it provides you another option. Again, I'm not interested in leaving, and I'm not suggesting that I am, but I think it's wise of the board to consider how that transition might look, because things happen, and you should be prepared. The sticker shock, though, comes in the comparison of that position. That's not budget neutral. Budget neutral is option one. Budget decrease is option three. This is a budget increase. And if you consider where Joe's position is at 0.5, you would need to double that. And that gets you into, growing in that salary at the central office. You've made a commitment to an HR generalist. And the board would have to make the consideration, is that the investment that we want to make? I did an analysis of superintendent, or those districts that had assistant superintendents. That ranged somewhere between 71% and 93% of the superintendent's salary, because I wanted to get a good guess on what's a reasonable range. So that reasonable range is somewhere between 131 and 172 if you do that same scale on a percentage of salary. And I think you also need to look at similar administrative positions within the district. If you look at Mr. Gaylor's position is a good comparable because that is also a full-time position. The same contracted days, and I think you need to be at least slightly higher than that maximum salary that's outlined in the negotiated agreement. So that puts you at somewhere in the 140 to 150 range. I will make the point that the lowest paid assistant superintendent in the state of North Dakota is actually at 162. So if we could be in that 140 to 150 range, that would be still a pretty good bargain in terms of comparisons. So with that, I would stand for questions, knowing that we are at a starting point for conversations. You may have a solution here. You may not have a solution. You might say, Rob, you need to go back to the drawing board and find different options. But these are the options that I think are the best place to start.
Melissa?
Couple of things. I do agree that Mr. Hageland has been working more than part-time. And just wondering if you think that maybe doing a 0.75 as opposed to a full-time might work in that and give us a little bit more options for maybe filling that position without filling it as a full-time position. And then also, since Mr. Hageland's retirement has been announced, have you had anybody contact you and inquire that they've had any interest in that position? And if so, kind of what did that, obviously you can't say names or anything, but just what was that conversation like? Were they saying, if it was full-time or if it was more, if you could kind of give us a little idea on that?
Sure, good questions. I'll answer your second question first. I haven't had anybody reach out to me since that has happened, although if we were to post a position, I would anticipate having that more, but just as a cold call, somebody that noticed, I haven't had anybody reach out to me and say, I've had people ask me, what's the plan? Is that going to be a full-time position? But not, I'm interested. It's been more, what's what's the district's plan for the position has been probably the more common question. The second question, could option one be expanded? I suppose it could. And if the direction I get is, Rob, you need to be a little bit more creative than 3 options, then I will go back and start to consider, things like, what different options might we have? But these are the options that I felt were the best to start with. And, from my perspective, what is, option 2 still presents the best long-term option, but that may or may not be where we're able to go.
Steve?
I think this is probably just maybe expanding on what Melissa brought up, but I'm just wondering about maybe like a option 1.5 that, maybe you could answer, what is the minimum credential for a position like this? I don't mean that in a bad way, but like if we don't call it an assistant superintendent position, but maybe we can fall in the 100 to 125,000 range, something like that, but 1.0 FTE.
So it really, it's a great question. It really depends on what responsibilities you give to that position and what job description you write for it. If the position holds certain aspects of what Mr. Hagelin's position is, you could have a teaching license. If other aspects, you would probably want that person to have a superintendent credential. It just ultimately depends. One point I would make is that if it was full-time, that's a full year agreement, so you have to look at that per day rate as it compares to some of the other positions you would want to analyze that cost too. But if you did that, lesser responsibilities, I would still wonder who does some of those things that Joe's doing now and where that falls, although we could probably try to figure that out. But I think you could get in I could go back to the drawing board and look at at different options in, to your point, 1A, 1B, 1C, if that's the direction or the general prevailing feeling of the board, then I could go and find some other options too. But I think it's possible, to answer your question.
Gail?
I myself would lean towards option 2, but I would like to see maybe some of the defined roles that those positions will each have. Thinking back to a time when I've worked when we've had assistant superintendents, I think, and this isn't meant to sound like a fault, I think the communication in the district is better, communication to the teachers, communication in the buildings, because there is more dedicated time for that. So that isn't meant as a criticism. It's one of the liabilities of being 1.5 people short. So I would like to see how those things divide. I know that sometimes in the past when we've had that position, there's been more time allocated towards grant writing as a part of that assistant superintendents. If that would be something we'd be looking for, sometimes they can return quite a bit of income through some of that work. So I'm just leaning towards that, knowing the amount of work that exists in a system.
So 2 points to that. One, I don't take that as criticism. That's a reality. The fewer people you have, the less functional that communication, that line of communication is going to be. There's just only so much time. With separation of duties, when I've seen the most effective assistant superintendent partnerships, it is when one takes on elementary or primary elementary responsibilities and one takes on primary secondary. There's alignment between the two positions, but the primary responsibilities shake down to who's in charge of that particular grade level area. That I have seen it be extremely efficient and much more improved communication, because then the only line of communication needs to happen between two offices. The superintendent and the assistant superintendent. There's a better alignment, but then you have a lot more time to devote to your area. Right now, for example, I have the responsibility to evaluate the tech director, CTC director, 2 high school administrators, 2 middle school administrators, 5 elementary principals. My ability to mentor and support is limited by time. You know, Joe's position takes on instructional coaches. You know, I have responsibilities to evaluate some support staff, some facility director, you know, those kinds of things that, again, that limits my ability to mentor and provide leadership level support. I would see that as an efficiency that is improved as well. But I think you're right in terms of everything that you said. And again, that's just what commitment level does the board feel comfortable making? That's really what you're talking about.
Jason?
So do you foresee, will the board have to approve the job descriptions once redefined?
Correct. I would see it as similar to how the board went through the process with the business manager and HR generalist. There were, you know, if that's if the direction I'm told is focus on, you know, 1A, 1B, and clear, you know, better define option 2, well, then that's what I'll do. If the direction is, you better focus on option 1A, 1B, then that's where I'll devote my time. Or if the option is, no, just go forward with option 2, well, then I know to post a position and move on. And hopefully you don't say option 3 is the way I want to go.
Jason?
So maybe the place to start would be to define or to come up with the job description and then assign either a salary or, that's just a thought. I have no doubts that our central office needs more manpower. Things can move more efficiently, quickly, that kind of thing. And, you know, I just want to make sure that this is a budget increase, so we don't want to greatly impact teacher salaries, that kind of thing. We just need to make sure that this is where we want to invest money, and I think we do. We just need to be cognizant of the other roles we're going to need to fill and making sure our teachers are given what they need. So I don't know. What do we think? Do the job description first or just go straight to number 2? Or that's right.
Okay. Jamie?
I'm kind of on the same page as everybody else. Option 3 is not really something I think any of us are looking at. But it would be beneficial to see more job descriptions, more options. Not that I'm opposed to a assistant superintendent, because that might be a direction we head to, but it'd be nice to maybe break down those job descriptions and see what other ways we could, with this budget increase, to get that. And if we go this direction, because it kind of feels like we're not settled here, we need more information, are we looking at like the next board meeting for a deadline for this?
Well, I think the deadline's going to be where, and I appreciate your questions, I think the deadline's going to be as soon as we can. You know, as soon as the board is ready to make a decision, we need to post a position. You know, I think the timing of this, the timing of Mr. Hagelin's retirement is really I mean, that's been the qualifying event, so to speak. You know, we wouldn't be having this conversation of adding time if it wasn't for, you know, Joe's choice to retire after many years in the district. But that's, you know, that's been an area we have felt we could expand upon, and I think Mr. Hagelin even commented on that in his resignation letter as well. The need to have additional support time to fulfill all those responsibilities. And so that's really the reason why we're doing it now. But I agree, if we need to have a little bit more information, I just wanted some direction so I could take a next step, but the timeline would be as soon as we can, because we need to post.
Okay. Melissa?
I guess I personally would like to see a job description for an assistant superintendent, what that would look like, as well as a job description for a .75 or one full-time position in a position that requires more of a teaching credential, so that we've got 2 separate things to work with.
and I'm on board with you, Melissa, in the way that, is this what you're saying? Because this was my thought. While we might want someone with superintendent credential, we also know the shortage of superintendents. And so I don't know that we want to limit ourselves to just that, whereas maybe a much broader salary range with maybe required qualifications, and then like it'd be great if you also had X, Y, and Z, just to give us some more flexibility depending on the pool of applicants. I think, when we hired our business administrator, office administrator, we had kind of a narrow salary range, and Christy came in with a lot of experience that we weren't probably always expecting. And so that I think having a broader salary range is going to allow for more flexibility. I know it's more of a budget impact on the top end, but I also thinking just with the shortage of those kinds of qualifications. The other thing is I think we do need to get moving forward because superintendents are signing their contracts as well and other options. So we want to make sure we have the best candidate pool as well. So those are my comments. Go ahead, Melissa.
Sorry. And I'm also thinking, I guess I should have put this out there too. I'm also thinking of maybe people who are in the district currently that are looking for moving up, not necessarily want to be in the principal position, but they're looking for something to, so that kind of helps with some retention also of some of our current employees that are looking for someplace.
Jason.
If we end up with a special meeting Tuesday, could this be ready for?
We probably won't be ready Tuesday because the time that Amy and I have been discussing on Tuesday, because of other meetings, there's facility meetings and negotiations meetings, that we may have a short window for a meeting at 5 p.m. Is the general time, and we would have to be done fairly quickly, so I don't think there would be enough time for discussion on that. And that is very, very tentative because we may not be ready even on Tuesday for that, but looking, yeah, and I mean, and I don't know that we would have the time to fit in there because there wasn't a lot of other time options for people that are working during the day.
I recognize the budget impact on this, but I kind of see this. This is a fairly significant strategic decision too, and we're not going to have that discussion until later on in the year. But we can't wait for it now. The discussions that come around this job description are going to be kind of laying the groundwork for how do we want to support the educators in the classroom? How will this position help do that? How will this help stabilize, the classroom experience while being able to focus on that kind of stuff? So I think that's something I think we need to consider when we have the discussion between 1A and option 2.
Good point, Dan. Thank you. Other discussion points? So Dr. Leck, you want to work on that? May 1st is our next, is that right? Our next meeting. So we'll have to do some thinking on it and read the information you prepare for us because I do think we don't want to wait until too long just for the candidate pool. Dan?
As far as would you like comments from us as far as that job description about what we'd be looking for and then you can kind of put the whole pile together and sift it through?
I think that would be great. If
Okay.
there are board perspectives on responsibilities, I would just send them my way. And I'm going to be having a conversation with Joe, with Christy. We'll look at, I'll probably analyze some assistant superintendent, like-sized assistant superintendent job descriptions, superintendent job descriptions, talk to some others. So any feedback I can have would be helpful. But I think I have a marching order, so I appreciate the dialogue.
And maybe even what Joe's availability is. The piece the more urgent piece I'm most concerned about is the Cognia visit coming up and the reports and Joe is so knowledgeable of that and just making sure we're on track for that. So yeah, so that's a big piece that we want to just make sure that we're on track for. Any other comments or discussions so we can get that information? Just email Dr. Leck your thoughts on that and we can move forward with that. And yep, very good discussion. Thank you. Moving on to 5B. Is there a motion for the approval to hire Tim Ranum as English teacher at the high school of salary of $52,200.70 for the 2023 to 2024 school year, with the salary to be adjusted at the completion of negotiations and upon a successful background check? Motion by Gail, second by Jamie. We have a motion and a second for approval to hire Tim Ranum as English teacher at the high school, salary $52,200.70 for the 2023 to 2024 school year, with the salary to be adjusted at the completion of negotiations and upon a successful background check. Any discussion? Any discussion? There being no discussion, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Welcome, Tim. C, approval to hire Diana Fink as fourth grade teacher at Roosevelt Elementary, salary of $45,342.05 for the 2023 to 2024 school year, with salary to be adjusted at the completion of negotiations and upon a successful background check. Motion by Melissa, second by Jamie. We have a motion and a second for approval to hire Diana Fink as the fourth grade teacher at Roosevelt Elementary, salary of $45,342.05 for the 2023 to 2024 school year, with salary to be adjusted at the completion of negotiations and upon a successful background check. Any discussion? Any discussion? No? Gail, any discussion? Jason? Okay. There being no discussion, all those, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved and welcome. D, approval of the resignation of Charles Drewer, social studies teacher at the high school at the conclusion of summer school, June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion? Motion by Gail? Second by Steve. We have a motion and a second for approval of the resignation of Charles Drewer, social studies teacher at the high school at the conclusion of the summer school, June 30th, 2023. Any discussion? Assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. And thank you, Mr. Drewer, for your dedication in the classroom and coaching basketball and esports, right? I think he also did. So thank you for that. Tennis. And tennis too? Okay, very good. Number 6, policies and procedures, nothing under that. 7, tuition, nothing under that. 8, other. A, is there a motion for proposal of the revised 2023 to 2024 school calendar? That was in relation to our professional development. Yep. Motion by Gail. Second by Jamie. We have a motion and a second to approve the proposal for revised 2023 to 2024 school calendar. Any discussion? Any discussion? Jason? There being no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. And then we'll get that on the website right away, the new calendar. Okay, just so families can be pre-prepared for that. Any items for future agendas? Any item? Jamie?
We need a new group picture.
Yes, we do. I thought about that, yes.
Give us 2 years. I was going to say, planning for that might be.
I wanted to take you again.
We're going to aiming for the July meeting, so schedule your hair appointments for accordingly. So thank you, Amy. If you want to just remind us sometime in advance of that so we can be prepared for that. Very good. Any other items for future agendas? If you think of something, please contact Dr. Leck or myself, and we can get that on a future agenda. Meetings to be scheduled. Teacher negotiations meeting on Tuesday, April 25th at 5:15 in the Thompson Community Room in the middle school. Administration negotiations meeting on Wednesday, April 26th at 4:30 p.m. in the district office conference room. School board meeting on Monday, May 1st, 2023 at 5:15 in the Thompson Community Room in the middle school. Health Insurance Committee meeting on Monday, May 8th, 2023 at 3:45 p.m. in the district office conference room. GED graduation on Tuesday, May 16th at 2023 at 7 p.m. Transition House graduation on Thursday, May 18th at 11 a.m. the Transition House. School board meeting on Monday, May 15th at 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room in the middle school. JPS graduation is scheduled Sunday, May 28th at 2:30. So make sure, 2:30. I always get asked, what time is graduation? So it is at 2:30 at the Civic Center. If your name is not listed here under the Civic Center graduation and you would like to attend, please let myself, Dr. Leck, or Amy know. We can make some other arrangements for seating for that. Also want to let the board know that we do not need to have that extra meeting in May. The person from Pierce Durek was available on Monday, May 15th, the same day as our school board meeting, so that will be our I have visited with Dr. Leck, and we're going to move our professional development, and that'll be our professional development for our policy review that we had discussed. For the board member, yep, go ahead.
If I can talk about that just briefly, I want to make sure that it aligns with people's vision for that time. I asked Meredith Vukulik, who we worked with through Pearson Durek, to come and talk about the applicable policies, the role of the board in the implementation and execution of those policies, the role of administrators and the role and execution of those policies. Does that align with the questions? Original intent of, okay?
Yep, and she'll walk us through the policies that we have that were
Yeah, and of course, she'll be available for questions.
for questions. Yep. So it worked out, that was one of the dates, and so so we wouldn't have to meet. That will be a long night, so, you know, because we may have some questions, and if we have executive session, we'll bring some snacks or something. We'll figure that out, so. Also for, yes. For the board members that have, including myself, that have not completed the self-evaluation, please go in and click that link and do that. It's open through the end of the day tomorrow, so thank you. Any other things? Yep, Jason?
Do we have a few negotiation sessions scheduled that need to go on here? I forget, we were confused as to the dates, but I'm not saying that for right now, this second, but I thought that we had a few scheduled.
We'll make sure they're posted.
I think after the first, after our next meeting.
After our next meeting. Yep, and we'll make sure they're posted, so, yep, thank you, Jason. Anything else? Yep. Yep, do you have the sheet? Does someone have the sheet? Yeah, okay. Possible executive session to discuss negotiations, is there a motion?
Because discussions on negotiations and developing strategy relative to the school board's position in this matter in open session would have an adverse fiscal effect on the position of the board and district, I move that the board enter into executive session and that the following members and negotiators be identified as being present. School board members Diane Hansen, Melissa Gleason, Heidi Larson, Gail Nelson, Jason Rohr, Dan Tweeten, Steve Veldkamp, and Jamie Bear. Superintendent Rob Leck and Christy Grounds. The date and time are April 17th, 2023 at 6:58 p.m. That the only following topic will be considered during the executive session is negotiation strategies. The legal authority for this executive session is section 44-04-19.1 of the North Dakota Century Code, and that the executive session be recorded.
And there's a motion? Second?
Friendly amendment that Mrs. Hansen and Mr. Roberts are not in attendance?
They're not here. Yep. Diane Hansen and Aaron Roberts are not present. Yep. And was that also a second to the motion? Jason, second to the motion. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Note that we will, after the executive session, we will return here and close the meeting.